Right, so getting back to the major point there. Now, there was a major incident in, I believe it was in Jakarta, I'm not sure exactly where it was, but the basis of it, on a Friday after Friday prayers, all the imams had basically been told to tell everyone to come out and riot. And they did, and they ripped the city to pieces, and no one could do anything about it because it was organised and it was absolute chaos. Now, what I want you to understand now is you've got over 2,000 mosques, you've got madrasas, and you've got other institutions throughout this country where the people in control are the imams. Now, it's fairly easy to talk to or message 2,000 particular types of imams, yeah, and say, this is what you're going to do, and you're doing it in the name of Islam, and you're doing it Friday after prayers. That is what our government are absolutely terrified of, right? And that is the tyranny that has been allowed to engulf this country. Right, so I want people to understand, whether it's 4 million, whether it's 6 million, whether it's 8 million, we don't know how many are in this country. What we do know is their allegiance is not to Britain, it's not to England, it's not to Scotland, it's not to Wales, and it's not to Northern Ireland. Their allegiance is to Islam. Their allegiance is to Muhammad. Their allegiance is in the destruction of Kafirs, right? Now, one of the problems I've got, and I've spoken on the show on a Friday night, I don't know if anyone remembered a guy called Darko that rang out, and he was talking about Serbia. Now, I've got particular interest in Serbia, and the reason I have is because I've studied Nazis. I haven't studied Nazis because I am a Nazi. I've studied Nazis because I realised how evil they were. And part of what they did was they used they used Islam, and they used Muslims, and especially Mohammedans, what I would describe as pure Islam and Mohammedism. Yeah, those SS brigades were the most ruthless. If you imagine ISIS as it is now, beheading, raping, killing, murdering, and doing everything they're doing now in the Middle East, imagine ISIS on the side of Hitler in SS uniforms under SS control and marching through Italy, which is what they did, yeah, and into Serbia, which is why Bosnia and Serbia had such a great massive indifference, because they slaughtered Serbians. Now, why is this important? Well, I'll tell you why it's important. Since the wall come down and Germany was reunified, that has caused a major issue in the European Union. Now, first of all, you've got to remember a number of things. Germany was always told you're never allowed to rearm. They have got 400,000 men under arms now. They have got tanks sitting on a number of borders on the European Union facing Russia. Russia was the country, as along with us, which was England and the Commonwealth, that went against the Nazis. And the only reason they were defeated was because they was defeated on a number of fronts, right? So I want people to understand where I'm coming from. Germany has got a major issue, and the issue is this. They have got an ageing population. Worse, and I've said this before on the show, far worse than Japan. And just to give you an example, in Japan, there are more adult nappies sold than there is baby nappies. Just to give you, that's the easiest way of explaining the demographic and how bad it is. Now, what you've got to understand is there's a book called The Demographic Cliff, right? And it's one of the reasons why we should not 100% should not be using what's known as GDP to measure our country's growth or potential or anything or value. What we should be measuring on, and once we're out of the European Union drop dead, we can measure it on that, is quality of life, right? That's how you should measure. So there shouldn't be 30,000 elderly people dying every year of the cold because they can't afford to eat or heat. Now, the positive to that, and there is a positive, when we leave the European Union, drop dead, get rid of the European Communities Act of 1972, we can implement the Bradbury Pound. And once we implement the Bradbury Pound, controlled correctly, not by communists, not by socialists, not by idiots that we've got there now, but by professional people that have run large businesses, that have come from nowhere to be somewhere, that understand how the economies work, we will use that. So that's the positive. Now let's get back to what the problem is in Germany, shall we? They have, right, imported, and they are still doing so, a Mohammedan army. Now, my vision of that army is very similar to the French Foreign Legion. And that is, the French Foreign Legion, basically, and I know a few people who joined... So I've just got a text come through. The French Foreign Legion, basically, up to the age of 55, you join the French Foreign Legion, you swear allegiance to France, they arm you, they train you, you learn to speak French, they give, after 5 years service, you get French citizenship. Do you understand that? You get French citizenship. The only thing they can do with these illiterate mob army that they've imported is to bring them into the German army. Now, bearing in mind, there are already 400,000 arms in front, because they should never have been armed in the first place, right? Their army is already bigger than ours. Our army in total is 60, 70,000, that's it, right? Now, this is why it's important. If you imagine you've got over 1.5 million young fighting, I'm talking about 1.5 million, and it's going up by the day, that have been welcomed into Germany. The only way Germany is going to deal with this, and by the way, when I say deal with it, this has always been part of the plan, right? They will bring them into the Free German Army. They will train them, they will give them firearms. And then what have you got? Then you have got the German Foreign Legion. You have got the same battalion that the SS used in the Second World War against the Italians and especially against the Serbians. I am telling you what's going on. That is exactly what's going on. So when people say to me, yeah, and I understand where they're coming from in one way, right? Churchill warned for 13 years, yeah, what Hitler was doing. He warned for 13 years that they are arming, they are bringing their military machine together to attack us and start marching through Europe. And what did they do? They kept him quiet. They kept him on the back benches. They actually stopped him going on the BBC for something like 23 months. They wouldn't let his voice be heard. Which is why we're out now talking on this radio show, telling it exactly how it is. Now, I don't want to put any finer things on this. 13 years, thank you very much, my friend. Right, that was Harold, by the way, who's just made a comment on the chat room that it was 13 years. Well done, son. Right, I stand corrected. This is my point, right? Now, if you understand, you look at the logic of what Merkel's doing, right? I want you to look at the logic of what Merkel has done. Do you honestly believe that she has open arms welcomed over 1.5 million young fighting men without their families, without anyone, believing in a single religion, which is, by the way, the nearest thing to Nazism, yeah, and that's absolute fact, yeah? Do you really believe that that has been some absolute blunder of absolute stupidity? Of course it isn't, right? Now, what you've got to think of is this. We are the only country, England in particular, and Protestants, we are the only country in Europe that has got its own constitution, its own lawful ways of doing things that are completely different from the European Union, which is why we stood out so much. Why do you think they hate the Commonwealth so much? They hate the Commonwealth because it was the Commonwealth that helped defeat Nazism, right? Now, the only way you're going to be at now, let me get back to what I was originally saying. We don't know what the trigger point is. What we do know is the police, and I've already watched the videos, and so's Davey, and so's other people. Now, I want you to understand this before I start talking about the right to bear arms, right? Because it's proper important, right? I want you to understand this, and this is the situation that we've got at the moment, yeah? if at any time, I mean, the police have already been doing it, so I might as well explain what I've actually seen rather than things that are not actually happened. In other words, hypothetical. Right? We'll actually talk about this. Right. So there was a video out that Tommy Robinson put out where a guy that had either assaulted a police officer, whatever happened, got arrested. He was a Muslim, right? A Mohammedan. He was taken into a police station. The Mohammedans besieged the police station and demanded his release. The police took a decision, to release him because of, or in case of civil unrest. They decided to release him. Now, what I'm saying to you, quite frankly, is that decision proves a point. It proves a point that they're absolutely terrified, of a minority 4 million plus, because they're outnumbered, they're outgunned, right? And that is the issue, right? So what I'm saying to you is, there is only one, so the Bill of Rights actually says, that Protestants from 1688-89, when it was implemented or become law, Protestants have the right to keep and bear arms. That goes back, and it is constitutional. Now, the reason I'm saying that we should be armed, first of all, we are Christians, right? So therefore, we believe in the golden rule, right? Which is, the golden rule is treat your neighbour how you expect to be treated. Secondly, the second golden rule, or the first golden rule, whatever you want to call it, there are a number of golden rules with Christianity, mainly the 10 Commandments. But what we'll talk about is thou shalt not murder, right? So it says that you can kill, but you can't murder. And the only reason you would kill anyone is in the defence of the realm. Now, there were militias about years ago, and those militias were only called into action with their arms, were only called into action to protect the realm or to protect their cities, to protect their areas, mainly from marauding Vikings. What is the difference between the Vikings of 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and Mohammedans now? Well, in terms of barbarism, not a lot is the answer. Except we've allowed them to come in here. Now, we was warned about this and warned about this and warned about it, and yet we didn't. Or not that we did nothing. There was plenty of commoners that was warning about it, but the elites were not interested because they have a different agenda, and that is why I say that there's tyranny. Now, the only way you're gonna arm or save the realm and certainly save England, right, is if we go back to the Constitution and say, listen, you have made an almighty cock-up, right? We need to be armed and armed now. And and that means you do not arm Muslims, right? They may get hold of guns, and they probably will, and I've no doubt they've even got machine guns, etc., knives, whatever you consider to be lethal force is already in a number of mosques. And we need to be extremely careful of that. You've already seen what they can do. They blew up, on 7/7, they blew up the underground, right, with bomb packs. They've gone around shooting people. Look at what they did in Glasgow when they firebombed a Glasgow airport, right? My point is this. The only way to protect the rule of law in this country, the only way to protect the one law, English law, in this country is for us to go back to the Constitution and to bear arms. Because when we've all got arms and we are 30 million of us ready to protect the realm, ready to protect this country, then and only then will the Muslims leave. We will give them an exit route. You can leave this country. You can leave this country of your own free will if you continue on this course of the Sunnah of Muhammad. You leave this country. Go to Sweden, go to Germany, go to France, go to Belgium, go wherever you want. But get the fuck out of my country. That is why there is a call to arms. That is the call to arms. And the call to arms is not sedition on my part. It is to protect to protect our children, to protect from rape jihad, to protect from Sukuk, which is already rife in the city of London, where they are buying up through our own stolen money. Yeah, they are buying everything. They are buying stuff up, and we are being annihilated. We are being attacked from every direction. Now, the only thing I can say to you people, is there is one thing that's going to stop them. And we need to act now. We need to bear arms. And as long as you are a Protestant and you believe as a Christian, thou shalt not murder, there is no issue with issuing someone with a firearm. Go and buy the firearm. In fact, what the law actually says is you can have any weapon which is within basically your means. So if someone was to supply the money for the weapons, we could all be walking around with whatever weapon that we needed. And I'm not suggesting in any way or form, I don't know what that one's for, Luton. Right. So I'm not suggesting in any way or form that we are going to go and forcibly eject anyone from this country. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, it is fairly obvious that the police, the army, and unless it is some sort of complicit conspiracy, yeah, which it could be, it absolutely could be that. But what I'm saying is, we have now got two elements to control. We've got the enemy within, and they are the enemy. We've got the enemy within that are well trained and have been out there, right? They have been out there fighting, they've come back, they're ready to kick again, right? We've got no way of controlling that unless we are armed. The police are not going to be able to deal with it. The SAS are not going to be able to deal with it. The only people that can stand up and move forward is us. We need to be armed. Women need to be armed. Do you think you're going to take a liberty or try and rape a woman or pull her fucking whatever down, yeah? If she's got a 357 strapped to her side, yeah? So you want it, but bear in mind, they are not to be armed. Now, look at the facts, and this is the facts, yeah? Well, again, Davy's just made a point on the chat room that we will be the biggest armed force. Let me tell you something now, right? Germany now, with 1.5 million, plus the 400,000 that she's already got, yeah? That are already armed, they have got the biggest standing army in the world. Bigger than China, for Christ's sake. Bigger than Russia. And you're telling me that we're just going to stand back and get slaughtered? Do you understand? We need to bear arms, right? Now, I've seen some of the stupid comments, and there are only one or two. I've got a post on my Facebook that says, you know, will you stand with us? We need 1,000 shares, we need 1,000 likes, right? Now, I want to literally make an application for a firearm for defence. There are things that have changed now in this country where we should be armed for the defence of the realm. And I'm telling you why. Because our politicians are fucked up, right? They're either completely ignorant, arrogant idiots, or they are complicit. I don't care which one of that it is. I don't care. I want to protect us. I want to protect my country, and I want to protect the people in my country, and I want to protect the kids in my country. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we are armed. And what they're doing to Tommy Robinson is outrageous. Why none of these elitist barristers have not stood up and stood forward and said, this is against the constitution of this country. What you are doing is an absolute disgrace. The fact that no one stands with him is an absolute disgrace. The fact that police officers have stood there and say, sorry Tommy, I'm just following orders. Where the fuck have I heard that before? Where have I heard that before? Let me tell you something. What the Nazis did. I'll tell you what they did. They disarmed the population. And when they disarmed the population, what did they do? They went for the Jews. They went for the Jews first. And the Jews got it first. And then the Masons got it. 100,000 Masons. And then what? Then they started on all of the other different types of people, the disabled. Why do you think they're now holding records of disability? Do you honestly believe that this country is all gone all lovey-dovey? Oh, we need to help the disabled. We need to help the mentally ill. We need to help this. They want a f***ing record of where they are and who you are. And let me tell you something, you're going straight on into either the gas chamber or you're going to be shot. They'll find a new way of getting rid of you people. 30,000 elderly people every year die of the cold in this country. No other country in Europe except this country. And you're telling me we haven't got the right to bear arms? We have got the right to bear arms. You have got the biggest land army standing right in front of us, ready to kick off, with millions of people in our own country to fight their rear guard for them. The Mohammedans that we have let in. The PC that has allowed it to happen. The only way we can deal with this is every single person who is a Protestant in this country has the right to bear arms. And no one has the right to tell us which arms it is. We want arms, we want rifles, we want pistols, and we want the ammunition. That is how we protect this country. And if there's anybody out there, especially if they've listened to this and they believe I'm wrong, yeah, well, I'm sorry, you're likely to be one of the first on the trains. Because HS2 is a troop movement carrier. That's why they want that. So they can get straight up this country and get the troops off either side as fast as possible. Right? The best thing you could do with that tunnel is fill it with concrete. They already had a plan, the army, just in case, yeah? They had a plan. And that plan was simple, yeah? Nuke the tunnel. If it kicks off in Europe, nuke the tunnel. Well, I'm telling you, that's exactly what we should be doing. Now, every single one of us who's listening to this show, I am going to put out a number of documents that shows you how to make an application for a firearm, right? I ain't interested in licensing. As soon as one of us is turned down, we take it to the High Court and we present our case under the Constitution. That is what's going to fuck them. Because we will publicise the fact that they are bringing us to the slaughter. And we are saying it ain't happening. That's the difference. But we need to do this legally first, right? And if they stop us, I am telling you, that is when it goes up. But I'm telling you now, every man, woman, anyone over the age of 21, technically you're a man or a woman, we need to bear arms, right? And we need to go for it. Now, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is because I've watched the videos and I've said to you a number of occasions before. I've told you about my uncles who fought in the war too, were taken prisoner. And, right, I've just had a question on the chat room. What happens if you've got a criminal record? There is nothing well, there's a number of things I'm going to say to that. The first is there's nothing in our constitution that says you can't have a firearm to protect the realm if you've got a criminal record, right? That's a load of bollocks. What you're listening to, anything to do with licensing, they cannot license a right. They cannot license a right. It is your right. It's your right to exist. It's your right to breathe. It's your right to have a firearm for the defence of the realm. That is what the Queen of England, yeah, her coronation oath stated, and she agreed to. We are not being treasonous to the Queen. The politicians have been treasonous to our Queen. The politicians have. What we need to do is bear arms and rise up, yeah? Now, I've got a document in front of me. I'm going to read out some key passages of it. But the main thing I was going to say to people is this, and bearing in mind the criminal record side. Let me just tell you this now, right? And I need people to be aware of this, right? In the First World War, Second World War, most of the wars we've ever had, the first thing they do is they ask, yeah, anyone who's in jail, do you want to go and fight for the country? They'll open the door and off you go, right? Literally, you're out there fighting for the country. So you can't then make a decision, sorry, you ain't entitled to bear arms. Bollocks, are you? Right? And let me tell you something, most of the criminals that I've ever known are the most loyal to this country. They might have got a bit of, into a bit of skullduggery or whatever, but if you give them a choice between fighting for this country, or going off with these firearms and robbing a load of banks or whatever, they'd laugh at you. They'd laugh at you. It's an honour to be given a firearm by the state to protect the defence of the realm. It is an honour. I do apologise if I've gone off on a bit of a rant, but I am absolutely passionate about this. And I'll give you an example of what made me so, it triggered me. When I see the photograph of the Sikh with a knife out of his waistband, and he was standing in front of a police officer outside of the courts, right? Now, if that had been Luton J, if that had been Tommy Robinson, if that had been me, if that had been Davey, we would have been nicked. The difference is, he is allowed to carry a knife as a Sikh and a devout Sikh, right? He's allowed to carry a knife. And do you know why? Because that knife represents him protecting the weak. That's it. Now, if you look at the photographs of him with Katie Hopkins, if you look at the photographs of him protecting Kate, well, he was, standing with Katie Hopkins in the LBC, you'll see the dagger again. He never leaves his side, and it is there for him to protect the weak. And yet he was standing there with us, saying we need to stop these paedophiles because the Sikhs have been attacked. They're Kafirs. They're the same as us. So when people say you're a racist, no, I don't. I absolutely respect that man's right to carry that knife, to protect the weak, right? Look what is happening in this country now because of multiculturalism. How many stabbings have we had? How many of them stabbings would happen if the people are armed? There is one rule of law, and it's gone down the pan, and it's gone down the pan because of, I can say it a million times, the Fabian Society. What they brought into this country is a complete destruction of our civilization and our society. We need to stop it. And the only way of stopping it is the right to bear arms. And you must believe 100%, as I do, thou shalt not murder. That weapon is for the defence of the realm and to defend your neighbour. That means if someone was to come along and there was a Muslim that was under attack, you have the right to stand there and point the gun at the person who's attacking the Muslim and say, stop what you're doing, right? So it's not as if we will become the defence force in this country. That is what we should do. That is the whole point of why we have got the right to bear arms. And unless we do something quickly, we are going to be slaughtered, because by the time Germany arms them 1.5 million people, and bearing in mind, if it goes into the Foreign Legion type analogy, which they can change at any time they want. They can change and give them all a passport, a German passport immediately, 6 months training with a firearm, and then say, and by the way, they're allowed to carry their firearm anywhere they like. They could come straight through that pipe to us. And if it kicked off, we'd be fighting in every city, in every town, major town in this country. You'll have the mosque kick off. They'll be armed, you'll have the people coming and fighting us. Do you understand what's going on here? Am I mad? Or can I actually see something that is absolutely going on? That is what's going on. This ain't a game. We need 100%, to bear arms. And no, I don't want to go round machine gunning anyone. But if there is the odd person that goes around and guns everyone, it's better to have that than to become an Islamic nation, which is exactly what we are going to be. An Islamic nation, unless we stand up and bear arms.